Nick Airball, Alan Keating, Peter, Steve. One of the most stacked lineups we've seen in a while. They played a 200-400 game with multiple pots over $500,000 and a lot of table talk. We look at one of the most exciting and biggest live stream high stakes games of 2025 as we see Nick Airball looking at King 9 suited. Steve calls with his Ace 10 off and Alan Keating picks up King Queen off in the straddle with 3-bet to 21,000. Steve gets out of the way and Airball calls. Flop comes 8-7-10 two-tone. Keating checks. Airball now snap bets 25k. And Alan Keating snap goes all in and Nick Airball calls? Are we seeing their hands correctly? What is this action? These guys won't believe each other at no cost. They decide to run this one twice. Airball goes runner in the first one to hit a flush, and the second run out comes blank. The pot gets chopped, but this shows how much these guys want to battle for all the pots and how great of a night this is going to be. Steve picks up jacks under the gun and raises to 3,000. There are multiple callers behind, and now Airball decides to 3-bet to 15,000 with Queen 10 offsuit. Brittany, looking at no other than pocket rockets, is going to min click to 30,000. Steve asks for a count and immediately goes all in for 98,000. We find ourselves in a $200,000 pot when Brittany calls. They decide to run it once. The run out looks clean, and then the river comes the jack of spades. Oh no, Brittany gets coolered and Steve picks up a major pot fairly early onto the stream. What a dirty river. The very next hand, Steve is going to look at pocket rockets himself and raises things up to 3,000. Mike now decides to 3-bet to 12,000 and Steve is going to think for a while and go for a very small 4-bet to 21,000. It is a legal raise and given the price, Mike is going to put the calling chips in. The flop is going to come 6-9-5 rainbow and Steve jams immediately. What is this play? I don't know. I mean, can he get a call from Mike with this line if he had a pair? I have no idea. We've seen how light this game plays, but Mike does let it go in the end. We're now looking at the biggest spot of the entire night between the two titans, Alan Keating and Peter. This is going to be the classic fashion where Keating picks up ace king and now Peter looks at jacks and 3-bets to 20,000. Action comes back to Keating who 4-bets to 75,000 and now Peter goes all in and Keating snap calls. We find ourselves in a super flip situation in a $476,000 pot. They announce one time and good luck is announced as well. No ace or a king on the flop, none on the turn, and the river is a 3 of hearts. Keating loses the biggest pot of the night to Peter. The next hand, we have multi-way action and we go to the flop 6 ways. It comes King 6-5, two-tone. Peter takes out the betting lead for $10,000 into a $18,000 pot. Charles is now going to main click with his top pair decent kicker to 20,000 and both players will make the call. We see that Mike has a better kicker with the king and we're going to go to the turn that comes the 4 of diamonds. This is a complete blank. It checks all the way around and we go straight to the river. River comes 8 of hearts and oh my god, Peter hits his trips. One of the worst cards in the deck, but at the same time, this puts us a one-liner to the 7, so there might be cheap showdown options for the players with the top pair holdings. This is exactly what happens when it checks all the way around and Peter is going to take this pot without too much blood. Action never stops and the very next hand, Steve opens ace-king to $7,000. Keating obviously calls with queen 5 of hearts and Airball closes the action with his ace-3 offsuit. The flop comes 5-6-7 all spades. Keating decides to be goofy and min-bet the flop for 400. Nick Airball has none of it and he raises to 8,000. Steve with the ace of spades will make the call here and Keating gets out of the way. The turn is a 6 of clubs pairing the board and the action goes check pretty quickly. We go to the river and it's the 8 of diamonds. Steve gets a check mark with his ace high. Airball obviously wants to fight for this pot, which is why he bets 28,000. More than a half-size pot bet to polarize Steve. Steve immediately makes the call without thinking too much, knowing that Airball can be doing this with any two face cards really, and Airball sides in frustration and mucks his cards. This call this fast can only happen in a game like this where VPIPs are off the roof and everybody is fighting for their ego. If you're enjoying this video and made this far, please consider subscribing as I put a lot of effort into these videos and 99% of my viewers are actually not subscribed. Next hand, Peter is going to raise with King 9 off to 3,000. Mike this time has Ace King, who's going to reach for chips to 3-bet to 15,000. Charles with a suited Broadway holding is going to make the call. Keating now is going to look down at pocket eights and going to go for a 4-bet to $95,000. Mike goes all in, Charles calls on top. What is this action on this table? I don't really understand. They run the board twice, and actually, Charles is going to scoop this one with the Jack 10 of hearts. Unbelievable. He hits the flush on the first board and 10 on the second run out to win this $217,000 pot. What a crazy night we're watching from these players here today.